So we have also joining us now on our next session to talk about more about this idea of digital diagnostics and being used not just at home but all over with this next company, AccurKardia. We're really happy to have also interviewing the CEO and founder of AccurKardia, Juan Jimenez, Nathan Sundheimer from Plug and Play. And Nathan, how are you?
Doing very well, Stan. Thanks for having me today.
No, thanks for joining us. We know how busy you both are. And with that, I'll hand over the virtual mic to you. Take it away.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Nathan Sundheimer, and I head U.S. healthcare partnerships at Plug and Play, where we help startups and corporates innovate and bring new solutions and technologies to market faster through accelerators, investing, and facilitated matchmaking. But today I'm here with Juan Jimenez, the founder and CEO of AccurKardia. Juan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Nathan, for having me.
Absolutely. So Juan, to get us kicked off, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and AccurKardia?
Sure. We co-founded AccurKardia 3 years ago with the goal in mind to save lives. I think cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death in the world, and we have built a platform to perform analysis on the electrical signal of the heart, which is measured by the ECG. So we have built different products that are in different stages of development to save life in that matter. And as my background, I am part of the co-founding team. Before that, I was the CEO of a large non-emergency medical transportation company in Puerto Rico. And before that, I was a junior banker in New York and in Credit Suisse. So.
Awesome, thank you. So kind of stemming off from the previous conversation and diving a little bit deeper into AccurKardia, what is the value of capturing healthcare data from consumer devices?
I think the value comes in different ways. Most importantly, it is the consumer devices are the most widely available devices for any human out there. So every year, more than 500 consumer wearable devices are shipped everywhere globally. So I think that kind of information is the first level of data that physicians and clinicians and healthcare systems can have about patient population. I call it the first line of defense. So in using that data, then we can enable telehealth and we can enable virtual care. But without that kind of information, I believe telehealth is nothing more than a Zoom call like this.
That makes sense, and I love the way that you put that. The data capturing is really that first line of defense. So, building off of that, what are some of the key trends that you're seeing in this space?
I think there's several. I think first of all, in terms of healthcare data, we all started with mobility information, and that information has been great, and it has been adopted by many payers, by many healthcare systems. And human beings in particular. But I've seen that as consumer devices are becoming better and more clinically validated, and clinical devices are becoming more convenient to wear and more consumer-like, I think we're seeing a next frontier of information coming from to enable clinicians to have better information about patients. So we're seeing sleep patterns, we're seeing oxygenation levels, we're seeing electrocardiogram information, heart rate information, that kind of information that would enable physicians to have a better sense of what's going on with the patient at home.
Awesome, that makes sense. That's a lot of great information. We did just receive an interesting question from the crowd, and the individual asked, can you talk about the use cases that you're building for, specifically at AccurKardia at the moment?
Sure. First of all, we have built products for clinical devices. So our products that we have built are API accessible devices from the traditional FDA clear regulatory approved monitoring devices, such as Holters, cardiac patches, event monitor, mobile cardiac telemetry devices. But we are translating that knowledge and know-how to the consumer sphere. So we have been working with several consumer readily available devices such as the Apple Watch, Samsung Watch, and other similar devices to test what information we can use for different use cases. So right now we are working with an iOS application for the Apple Watch, and we are validating the value of that information from for a QT interval perspective. And why you say why QT is important from an EKG perspective, QT is being monitored by many drug companies as part of their clinical trials, because there are certain drug therapies that may cause QT elongation and therefore causing other more severe arrhythmias or heart conditions. So we are right now working with a hospital in the New York area, validating the value of the Apple Watch information together with our core software to be able to perform QT measurements at home. So drug, clinical trials adherence, as well as participation from diverse background patients, it is more common, because an issue with participation in clinical trials is that there are certain demographic groups that they may not have representation because their work schedules are not as flexible versus others. So I think the more clinical consumer devices become clinical and the more we can validate to enable diverse population to participate in clinical trials, it will bring participation and representation in those efforts better.
Awesome, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And with all the success and all the value that is brought by having these technologies and these use cases, in your opinion, based off of what you're seeing, what is some of the rationale for some of the resistance with the adoption of these technologies?
I think when most of it is the perspective of a glass half empty rather than a glass half full perspective. We know right now most of consumer devices cannot replace clinical devices, and we don't expect them to replace them for the near future. But we have to look for the value and what can we do at home with the information that we have in hand. And in the EKG space, none of us have 12 lead EKGs sitting in your home, or you have readily available information or access to a cardiologist. So what we are trying to is build products to deliver the best possible information as a first line of defense for healthcare or healthcare diagnostics, using consumer available information. And then physicians may prescribe more clinical devices or more expensive devices to monitor particular conditions. But as a first line of defense, we need something that we all have at home, readily available, and doesn't cost much from a payer or healthcare system perspective.
That's great. And along those lines, have you seen any sort of unexpected benefits from the adoption of these solutions? I know we're talking about getting the adoption there, but what are some unexpected things that you've been seeing that have been positive, both for the provider and for the patient with this information?
I think most important from a patient perspective is being able to detect certain serious conditions in infancy. You know, it's waiting until you have a serious condition and address that serious condition is a more troublesome for both patient as well as healthcare systems. So for us, the most ideal scenario is in studies and cases in which with an Apple Watch ECG reading and our AccurKardia technology, we have been able to identify certain conditions that could have been treated earlier, and improvement of that patient condition could have done significantly.
Awesome, makes sense. And I know we're coming up on time, but there's another interesting question from the crowd. What challenges have you faced when working with geriatric patients who may or may not be familiar with technology or these dexterity issues? They're more so curious because they think compliance would likely be a concern.
It is, and that is a challenge. That's why we are working with new upcoming technologies such as biofabrics. And I think for certain population where they may have some mobility issues, we need to bring a new level of technology that the current technologies available do not address. And I think that's something that we are working on, and to be able to bring those kind of technologies that may benefit population that may have mobility or technology accessibility issues.
Got it. Awesome. I know we're coming up on time, but that kind of leads into my next question, because I was going to ask what's next in this space. I know biofabrics is a new thing that's popping up, but are there other things that you foresee kind of rising to the top?
Improvement in battery life. I think it's essential to have remote patient monitoring scale with consumer devices and improving the quality and reliability of battery life. And therefore, the signal coming from devices improve as the battery life improve or last longer. So I think the improvement in battery life together with biofabrics are then, we believe, is the next phase in consumer devices.
Great, thank you. And before Stan hops back on, there's one last question that I found that might be interesting for you. Would you be interested in collaborating with other companies that have different digital health solutions? I'm not exactly sure what the solution is, but are you looking for additional collaboration opportunities?
Yes, we are. We believe we have a certain expertise in the ECG space, but we believe collaborating with different device makers, both clinical and consumer-like, and also other technologies, so we can enhance and improve patient outcomes. So that's at the end our goal, saving life and improving patient outcomes.
Awesome. Well, perfect. And thank you so much, Juan. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation with you today. And Stan, I see you're back, so I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you,
Oh,
Nathan.
wonderful. Thank you,
Bye, Stan.
Nathan. Thank you, Juan. Thank you both.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Fantastic. Yeah, you too. And again, Plug and Play, a great group to work with, along with a lot of our other partners like Startup Health and Dream It and others that are out there in the ecosystem, really trying to accelerate the development and the adoption of these technologies.